Welcome to the 1905 podcast, home of the world champions, Chelsea. Each week, Joe and I bring you our unfiltered takes on the highs, the lows, and everything in between, following the Blues from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes. Welcome to another international break episode of the 1905 podcast. Joe and I are together in person today. Joe, how have you enjoyed the first week of the international break?
Well, I watched the England game yesterday through closed eyes as I was falling asleep in the second half. But no, it was quite a good game. The first 20 minutes was great, wasn't it? And then after that, it was a little bit drab, like they always are. But yeah, it's been fine, but I can't wait for the Premier League to start again.
The same. I think for the first week, I've just been ingesting Chelsea-Liverpool content, like in every form possible. There's been loads of tactical breakdowns of how we beat them. And yeah, as I said at the end of the last podcast, I've watched the Estevão goal far too many times from far too many angles, and that has not stopped. It has continued. But yeah, we're here to talk about other stuff today. So today's podcast split in two. We asked for listener questions, and you sent us some. So we're going to answer the listener questions in part one, and then part two, we will preview the big game at Nottingham Forest on Saturday lunchtime. So we have three listener questions. And I am going to start, Joe, with, I think, a very interesting question that I know you've been primed to answer, which is from Carl. And it's something you and I were talking about off pod. This is very timely. How important is style of football to you as a fan? And how do you balance the importance of winning football versus beautiful football? Joe, when you saw that question, what's the first thing that sort of came to mind? How would you answer it?
Firstly, I was pleased that it came in because we have been discussing this for a while in between Brighton and Liverpool games. So I think firstly, I have no problem with a manager coming in, starting the regime with a system, a formation, something they believe in, because I think most managers do, right? That's fair enough. Personally, I quite like my managers to be fairly flexible and I suppose play each game on merit opposed to just I have a 3-4-1 or whatever and I'm going to play this way and only this way. I think as an example of that, Jose Mourinho. So going back a little bit, I know, but if you remember in 2014, we played Liverpool at Anfield, funny enough, and they've been on this 11-game winning streak. They were going for the league title. We played Atletico Madrid in the first leg of the Champions League semi-final. We drew 0-0. And we had the second leg at home. And in between those games was Liverpool. So you're thinking, okay, this is a tricky game. And Jose on the day was sort of beset by injuries and illness. And he sort of made joking remarks in the press that he was not going to throw the game, but he was going to play a weakened team and all this sort of stuff. And you're going, oh, okay. In the build-up, you're a bit worried, if anything, because you don't want to lose to Liverpool anyway. And lo and behold, he starts, Mark Schwarzer in goal, Thomas Callas came in at right centre-back, and you're going, this is just bonkers. And if you remember, Chelsea sat back in the game a little bit. We frustrated them with a little bit of time wasted and stuff. And then we waited our chance. Obviously, Gerrard slips, Demirbay goes through, we get a goal. We get to half-time, and he basically just went 6 at the back. We had 6 at the back. Every time the ball went out for a goal kick, Mark Schwarzer would hold on to it, and he would kick it long. But also, in the meantime, he would put the ball down 3 or 4 times, get his yellow card, except all those sorts of stuff that goes on. He would completely shit out the game. And if the ball went to the sideline, Jose would pick it up, he'd hold on to it a little bit longer than he should do, and Liverpool players would get more riled up by it. And that, in a sense, I don't know about you, but that's drama. We played Brighton last year at the Amex, and we lost 3-0. And I think on the day we had something like 70 or 75% of the ball, and we created nothing and went nowhere. I know of the two teams that day who I was more excited to watch. Brighton created lots of chances. They came at us fiercely and all that sort of stuff. So you're sort of going, what is it? What is it do we want? I don't want always to be told or gaslit into thinking that having possession of the football is in some way wonderful, because there's more than one way to skin a cat. So I think as long as you're playing good enough football, winning football is always the way.
Really well put. I think pragmatism is the word, isn't it? As a fan, that you want to see. You want to see, playing to the strengths of the team and not being afraid to change it, because there's nothing more frustrating than that. I think because I think the really interesting question actually is, what is fun football to watch? Like, and you'll get told Sarri ball is beautiful football, that Pep Guardiola style of keep the ball is really good football. Really, Maresca came with that reputation from Leicester, didn't he, of like possession at all costs style football. I think most football fans get bored of that and sick of that pretty quickly. I think you only accept it if you're winning. So in that kind of example of Man City, where they've done it so well under Pep, no complaints because they're winning games in every which way possible, and it's fine. I think it's a really, really frustrating way to lose a football match, though. There is something fun as a fan about shithousing a win 1-0 away on the counter, or feeling like actually we play really quickly on the break. Like, it's really exciting the way under like Conte, for example, in that season. I know we've talked about that as one of our favourite seasons. It always felt like everything we did was fast, and that is exciting. So, yeah, very good question though. And I think the answer we probably put across is we want to win. You're always happy after a win. Question 2, Robert Andrews. Hi guys, love the pod from Australia. This is our first ever email from Australia, by the way. This is very exciting. Thanks, Rob. How about a look at our loanees' progress? So when I got this question, I was like, oh, there's going to be loads. But actually, when you look at the list of first team loans, we are a long way from the days of 15-20. And I counted 6 players that are worth a bit of discussion here, 3 of which are at Strasbourg. So the 3 boys at Strasbourg, I'll go through quickly. I'll give you a kind of a quick overview of how they've got on. We've got Mamadou Sarr, the centre-back. We got one glimpse of him in the World Club Cup, didn't we, for about half an hour? But he's been, again, a mainstay of that Strasbourg team. He's played 7 games, 90 minutes in all of them. And Liam Rosinia said he's a world-class centre-half in the making. He's 19. Second player that is worth a mention that we've talked about a lot in the pod is Mike Benders. This is pretty similar. He's played just about every game, 6 appearances, 3 clean sheets. And again, I think one mistake he's made that led to a goal, but has been again very good. And again, another big one to watch. And then the other one is Kendry Paez, who has mainly appeared off the bench, 6 appearances of him at Strasbourg. Scored 1 goal with his head, and again described as a kid with a gift by Rosinia. All 3 of those will be hoping that they can follow, I guess, the Andre Santos path, won't they, in terms of coming back next season. And it's early days, but all 3 have a chance, because with Buonanotte obviously on loan, all 3 of them, there are obvious spots where they could come into the squad next season. Joe, which one of those are you most excited about? And is it obvious to say Penders?
Penders, clearly, there's a spot for him, of course. But Mamadou Sarr is quite an interesting character. He's given quite a few interviews before he left Chelsea, so he signed and then went back on loan to Strasbourg. He's given a little interview there. He's given another interview since there about coming back to Chelsea and looking forward to being part of, the club and all the rest of it. He seems quietly confident in his own ability, which I do like. Now, do you say he's 19? Forgive me. Yeah, so he's 19. He still might be a little bit raw and a little bit young, but I think he's got the jump start on Anselmino, who you can talk about in a moment. I think he's definitely got the lead over him. I think that Penders, as we all know, we think he's going to be the great hope. We don't definitely know this, but we hope that he's going to be a fantastic goalkeeper for us. Paez, I feel as though out of all of them, he might be the one that goes back on loan next season, just because of his age. And they might decide that he's had a year in France. He might get a loan, maybe in the Premier League, maybe in Spain or somewhere where it's a bit more of a competitive league, possibly. And yeah, I think that out of those 3 players, I think that Penders and Sarr definitely got a chance of being part of the squad next season.
Yeah, and it's worth saying with Sarr as well. He's captained Strasbourg as well this year. We often talk about leadership. I mean, we probably, when we think about leadership, want someone who's a little bit older than 19, but again, another example of someone that's obviously got character. Like we said that with Hato, didn't we? And he's 6'4", so he's a good bit of height, which we've been shouting for, and right-footed, so he could come in alongside Cole and be a good balance. Anselmino, not much to say on him. He had a brilliant debut against Union Berlin. There are a load of highlights going around on Twitter, basically, of all of how brilliant he was in the game, and he hasn't played since. So he's been injured since with muscle injury. So Meant to be back after the international break. Very highly rated. Long way to go. I'm not going to talk too much about Nicholas Jackson because although he is a loanee, he's a loanee that's probably more likely to be sold than come back in the squad next season unless a lot changes. But you probably want him to do well, don't you, Joe? Because you do, weirdly, because if he stays or leaves, and he does leave, you want his value to be high, whether that's at Bayern Munich or somewhere else. He scored a goal and got an assist in one of their Champions League games against Paphos. Hasn't done great though, has he? I think you know a bit more about him than me, but I don't think he's done great in the league games.
Yeah, he's had quite a lot of one-on-ones, quite a few one-on-ones, and yeah, he's not taken any of them so far, which has been a bit of a worry. Yeah, he's a funny one because I don't think any of us dislike Jackson. I mean, I don't know a Chelsea fan that really dislikes him. Really, he's quite a likable guy, but I think he hasn't covered himself in massive glory by the fact he wouldn't come back after his purchase from Bayern. It was going to be, and then he didn't want to come back when we had the injury to Delap and what have you. He didn't cover himself in glory there, but we did mess him around a bit, I think, if we're being honest. I think in my head, I've already written him off as a player that we're not going to see again. But like you say, Chris, if he does poorly, then Bayern aren't going to buy him, certainly not for the money that they've said they would. And secondly, you want another team to come in for him if he does okay. And clearly, Chelsea want around, I would suggest, between 60 and 80 million. And are they going to get that? I don't really know. But I think they'll probably get 60 million because of the market. The striker market is so high. But yeah, Nicholas Jackson is probably a player that I think that we won't see in a Chelsea shirt again.
It's the Raheem Sterling lesson, isn't it, that I've learned, where last season he really struggled at Arsenal and I kind of loved that and found it really funny. But then at the end of the season, they give him back and it's your problem again. And actually, if Sterling had a brilliant time at Arsenal and smashed it, then he would definitely be at a club now and would not still be on the books. So you kind of want Jackson to do something similar. And then I'm going to cheat slightly because he's not on loan, this guy, but he kind of is. So Giovanni Quenda, who will join Chelsea officially in the summer, I think is worth a mention because he is, for those who don't know, very highly rated young player that we bought from Sporting. And he's just still smashing it. He's had 8 appearances in all competitions, 2 Champions League games, one of which he got a goal and an assist in, by the way. I saw highlights of that one and he looked unbelievable. It was against one of the lower teams in the Champions League, I should say, Kairat Almaty. But he looks the real deal. He's played right wing back, left wing back, right wing. He's all pace and dribbling. And in the same way that this time last year, on quite a few of the pods, we talked about our excitement for Estevão, and we're watching a lot of his highlights and thinking, oh, he could come in next summer and be a relevant part of the team. You've got to look at Quenda and again, thinking he's looking at that path, thinking, yeah, I wouldn't mind that journey. Interested in watching and seeing what Chelsea want to do with him in the summer. And then the final question was from Frank. So it's mainly aimed at me, but Joe, I know you've got a view on this as well. Frank says, Chris, you mentioned goal music after the Liverpool game. So for those who didn't see it, I was complaining about the music that Chelsea are playing at Stamford Bridge after games. As an American fan, it's pretty common here. Why don't you like it? This is an interesting one. I've got a couple of bits to talk to him about this one. I think I talked a bit on the pod last time about why I don't like it from a fan being at the ground perspective. I think it's the one time you don't need help with the atmosphere. And I just don't like the idea. I'm a purist, I guess. I don't like the idea of that natural moment of fans going wild being interrupted by music. It feels artificial and to me just not the way I want to go when I go to football. However, one thing I often say is that I have strong opinions loosely held, in that I have strong opinions, but I also want to listen to other people's opinions. And it's been interesting talking to a few people who have experienced this already at Stamford Bridge to get their views. Now, there are plenty I've met who are like me and have said, yeah, completely against it, have signed the petition and said, yeah, I don't want it, they need to get rid of it. But interestingly, I've spoken to a few others who are slightly different. So someone who I know is obsessed with atmosphere at Chelsea and other grounds, who's a guy I go to the gym with, is an away season ticket holder at Chelsea. So he goes to every away game, talks a lot about this kind of stuff. And I saw him and I was like, oh, what do you make of that music? I bet you hate it. What's your view on it? And he was like, do you know what? Actually, what it did was it extended the celebration. So obviously the Estevão celebration itself was crazy, but actually it made it go on a bit longer. It was really fun, and it was just interesting. I was like, that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't sort of seen it through that lens. I thought he would be like, I'm all against it, but he was like, actually, I think Chelsea are just one of the first to use this. It will become a bit more commonplace. So that changed my perspective a little bit. And then I emailed Mark Meehan from the Chelsea Supporters Trust, who we've had on the podcast before, and basically shared my perspective. I'm not a huge fan. I'm sure he's had a few emails about this before. I just wanted to share it with him, really. And he gave me the contact details of a couple of people at Chelsea and said, look, I'd recommend that you email Jason Gannon and Daniel Finkelstein and share your view. So I emailed yesterday Jason Gannon, who, for those who don't know, is the president and COO at Chelsea, and Daniel Finkelstein. And I shared basically that view that I've just shared with you guys, but I also shared a couple of ideas as well, on the basis that if they're not going to change it, at least consider this. And my two ideas were, number one, delay it. So let the natural celebration happen first. Give it the 10 to 20, 30 seconds of fan celebration you that would normally happen, and then bring in the music after to extend it. And the second one, which probably is obvious, don't use it every single time. Make it very quickly becomes, I think you said, Joe, like it'll become tired, the novelty will run out, it will become overused and a bit cringe. So don't use it every time, use it selectively, a little bit like we do with One Step Beyond after games of Chelsea. And of course, don't use it when we're losing a game we've got a consolation about. So I sent the emails back in, let's be honest, expecting to get nothing back. Maybe an auto reply. And fair play, I got emails back from both of them within 2 hours. Daniel Finkelstein sent an email saying, thank you so much. Terrific email, top class advice. Daniel is one of the board directors at Chelsea, for those who don't know. And Jason Gannon sent me this reply. Chris, thank you for your constructive feedback. We do have a set of guidelines to help determine when the music will be played. I can assure you, I should have done a different voice for this, shouldn't I? What's my American accent like? No, I won't do that. I can assure you that we have no intentions of playing the music when circumstances do not warrant, which we acknowledge the circumstances of which can be subjective itself. By the way, I also mentioned the fact that if you delay it a little bit, it gives you the advantage of VAR not interrupting and embarrassing the celebration as well. As an example, this is back to Jason, by the way. Again, I should have done the accent. If we were to have scored a goal against Brighton when we were 3-1 down, we would not have played the goal music. Again, thank you for your constructive feedback, and we appreciate your support. And don't hesitate to reach out with additional thoughts. Credit to the club for showing that they're listening. Again, assuming it is Jason himself, but the tone of it felt like it was. And I'm really interested to hear from other fans of your views on this, whether you're a match-going fan or not, or someone who experiences this in other sports. It's been talked about a lot. It's created a lot of debate. I've seen it on Sky Sports. I've heard it talked about on other podcasts. It's definitely been picked up, and it'll be interesting to see how Chelsea respond. But yeah, I wanted to share all of that because I thought it was an interesting kind of insight from the club. Joe, you're not a fan, but do you want to add anything else?
I think firstly, well done for sending that email in and getting those responses, and also, like you say, fair play to Chelsea and those people responding in the speed they did. I'm not a fan. No, I'm not a fan. I think we had a discussion yesterday about it, and I think that I can understand what you're saying. I can understand what the club are thinking to try and create that little bit of buzz in the ground. But I think at any point in the game, if we score a goal, if we need livening up to celebrate, then there is something seriously wrong. I think you mentioned it before. Other people on forums have mentioned it before. When Chelsea score a goal, particularly an important goal, obviously we bang the back of the Matthew Harding stand to, you hear that famous noise, which does get drowned out by the music. Obviously, everything you say about the VAR and the delay of the music, if it was to be played, makes complete sense. I think I was speaking to a couple of guys today at work, and they were just completely taking the piss out of Chelsea, calling us an embarrassment. Mickey Mouse Club can't even generate, your own support, so you've got to amplify it in with. And I'm like, I'm sitting there going, well, I'm not doing it. I'm not putting the music in, and I don't want the music in. And I think we are just diluting what is supposed to be a very treasured and a precious moment in the game. I think that I understand what the club are trying to do. I think it's probably just a test to see how things go. And I think if no one has said anything, it probably would have just carried on. But I think because I've had some pushback on it, I wonder if they do decide slowly just to phase it out. But I'm not a fan.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Be very interesting to see what they do with this and how much the fan reaction to it. There's been plenty of negative does affect it. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I'm sure we'll talk about it again, but we will move on after the break and talk about Nottingham Forest on Saturday lunchtime. Right, Forest away is an incredibly important game for me because it's on my birthday, Joe. You can't lose a game on your birthday, can you? That would be horrific. And obviously it's a return to Forest where we had a brilliant end to the season last year, where we got that 1-0 win with Levi Cole's goal. I think the first thing to say about the game is probably that it being the first game after the international break and it being Chelsea, your general thought immediately is, oh, it's a bit of a nightmare for us because we're going to have loads of players away. Forest probably aren't, and it gives them an immediate advantage. Well, actually, it's completely the other way around. Chelsea have only 5 players on international duty, certainly first team players, which are Marc Cucurella, Enzo Fernandez, Estevão, Gusto, and obviously Jorgensen. Say obviously because he won't probably play. So there's really 4 real sort of first team lineup players potentially there that are in the group. Nottingham Forest have 12 players on international duty. And again, I won't list all of those players out, but they are in the main very important players to them, like Elliot Anderson, Morgan Gibbs-White, Matt Sells, Milenkovic, Chris Wood, etc. So that when I saw that, it immediately surprised me and made me feel a bit better about the game on Saturday from that perspective. Joe, how are you feeling about the game itself and how important it is that Chelsea follow that Liverpool game up with a win?
Yeah, again, you've got to be confident, right? I think what's important, I don't think people sometimes understand this, right? So when Chelsea they've had a massive win against Liverpool, against, again, arguably the best side in the country at the moment, they then all go on international duty all around the world and they don't get to savour that moment. Well, the fact is you've just ruled off effectively just 4 players, 4 outfield players have gone. So the remaining players are all at the club. They can talk about that game. They can talk about the assist. They can talk about their wonderful goal when they're warming down and warming up, having shots, blah, 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 blah. And I think people underestimate that in itself as a bond within a team. So I'm kind of hoping they can just galvanise themselves here. They got, say, like you said, Nottingham Forest and Sunderland coming up in the league. A very good opportunity to take some good points. And again, if Andy's going to continue to play the way he is, then Chelsea are going to get chances galore. And as we're going to go through in a moment, there's a player that we think that could exploit that very, very well. But we'll get to that in the team selection.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about the team set that we've picked for the game. For me, and I know this has been talked about in other places, but it's just so important to follow up that win against Liverpool, where you just suddenly feel it's sort of flip a coin, isn't it? That the momentum and feel good is back at Chelsea. The league table looks more reasonable. Suddenly the start of the season looks okay. It's so important that Chelsea follow that up with, let's pick the next two games, Forest away, Sunderland at home. You've got to go there and try and get 6 points. And we've started to build a bit of a head of steam in the season. This has been, I think, Chelsea's problem in recent years of not doing this consistently. We talked about it earlier in the season when we had the preview the two games really against Brentford and Man United, saying, okay, 6 points. And obviously we blew that completely with one. It's just so important that Chelsea show that we're learning and we've grown up a bit and go to Forest and get a proper result. In terms of our team then for the lineup, I think there's a couple of areas here that I think were very interesting talking points actually and quite difficult to do. So we'll go through the easy ones. So Rob Sanchez in goal is very easy. We think right back Reece James probably would be our choice anyway, but particularly with Gusto being an international duty, it makes that even easier. Mark Cucurella, left back, best left back in the world. Centre backs. The assumption is that actually we could have all of them back fit again, we think, outside of obviously Colwell. So suddenly that brings Tosin back from injury, Chalobah back from suspension, and Fofana back from concussion protocol back in the reckoning. But Joe, we have decided that the men who played so well against Liverpool for the best part of an hour and have done in Betty Shields Parks and two very good games on the bounce should keep their places, right? And so we would start with Josh Achimpong and Betty Shield at the heart of the defence.
Yeah, I think they deserve their chance to continue. If they're fit, obviously we're not 100% sure they are fit completely, but I think my only reasoning for bringing Tosin back in, which I don't want to do, by the way, but is because he played so well against Chris Wood last season at the back end of the year. So, but I think Buddy Shield should be good enough and strong enough to deal with him, and that also leaves Achimpong to do his thing. So I think I would be devastated to have played that well. And if I'm fit and ready to go, I would expect to play the next game. I know Maresca does have these weird and wonderful ideas, but I think that they certainly deserve their chance to continue.
Send the right message, wouldn't it? In terms of if you play well, you keep your place, which is very old school, but probably should be the way there. Centre midfield, Moise Caicedo, who suddenly the rest of the world seems to have woken up to being an amazing midfielder, which we've known for the last 2 years, but the rest of the world now realises that too. Great that he's had 2 weeks off. He comes straight into the team, obviously. And alongside him, we have picked Romeo Lavia. We saw in that 20 minutes against Liverpool just how good he is. Again, that reminder. Great to see him get a start. Again, our team selection influenced a little bit here by the fact that Enzo Fernandez is on international duty with a lot of travel. And he isn't in our starting lineup. We'd have him on the bench. But it'd be great to see Lavia in there. If we can get an hour out of Lavia, I think that'd be a big win. And then our wingers are Pedro Neto and Garnacho. Again, both played well enough against Liverpool to keep the places. And again, Estevão, who scored 2 goals today for the Brazil, by the way, against South Korea. But the fact that he's going to be playing Japan on Tuesday night, it's a long way to travel for him. And so we think, would probably be on the bench for this one. And this is our other big selection, really, outside of the centre-backs, we think, which is that we would pick João Pedro as number 10 behind Marc Guéhi. So Marc Guéhi doing a lot of that running, as you said, Joe, finding that space in behind, and João Pedro naturally picking up all the spaces that we know he loves doing, which he will do anyway. So the idea of having Marc Guéhi, Neto and Garnacho all running forward, hitting those spaces with the likes of Caicedo, Lavia and João Pedro to find them actually feels quite an interesting balance, doesn't it? Any addition for your side there?
This feels like Marc Guéhi's chance to actually come into the side. It feels like a brilliant game to come in as your first start of the season. We haven't seen a lot of him. We saw that cameo against Liverpool and he was absolutely fantastic running after every single thing. He will not give that Forest back for a moment's peace. So if Chelsea, well, we know they're good enough, they've got great players to get the ball to him, it's whether or not he can actually go and finish the ball. I think he's going to get, well, if he starts, I think he could get multiple chances in this game. And it could be, no, look, we're not saying he's better than Delap or better than this player or whatever, but for what we've got at the moment, he's all we've got, really. So I think we sort of need to keep him on side and give him some football. And this is a perfect chance to come in and score a goal.
I think if he doesn't get meaningful minutes against Forest and Sunderland, obviously his old team, then kind of what's the point? What's the point of bringing him back? It feels a bit like that, doesn't it? I'd like to see him get a start, as we've said, but if not, then meaningful minutes and a meaningful role in those games. Every time Joe predicts that Chelsea are going to win, we lose. And every time you predict we lose, we win. So how many goals is Forest going to win by and what's the score going to be?
It's going to be Forest 4, Chelsea 0.
Okay. You heard it here first. We'll only carry on doing this until it backfires, and then we'll stop this silly little joke. But there we go. Let's hope it continues and Chelsea win the game, and we'll be back to reflect on that Forest game. Look forward to Ajax in the Champions League to continue the momentum against Benfica. Every little thing's going to be all right. That's enough for this week. We'll see you next time. Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.